Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. My elders, fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
This evening we are blessed to be in the presence of Moulana Syed Muhammad Rizvi. We'd like to start by thanking him for taking time out of his busy schedule to meet with us today. Inshallah, we will be able to engage in some fruitful discussion and come out of here with more knowledge than what we came in, inshallah. So, Sayyidina, welcome.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. I thank this for this opportunity to be with the youths and the Mu'minin and Mu'minat in that part of the world where I grew up. So inshallah, we're hopeful that this program would be beneficial.
Inshallah. So as is customary, we would like to begin with the recitation of Holy Quran. And for that, I would like to ask our brother Muhammad Zamin Kara to bless us with a few holy words.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا من يرتد منكم عن دينه فسوف يأتي الله بقوم يحبهم ويحبونه أذلة على المؤمنين عزة على الكافرين يجاهدون في سبيل الله ولا يخافون لومة لائم ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله واسع عليم إنما وليكم الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا الذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم راكعون ومن يتول الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا فإن حزب الله هم الغالبون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Thank you, Brother Muhammad Zamin. Brothers and sisters, before we begin, I'd like to just enlighten us all on a little bit about the blessed scholar that we have with us today. So, if you would allow me, I'd just like to brief us all on Moulana. So, Moulana Syed Muhammad Rizvi was born in 1957 in a family of ulama in Bihar, India. He migrated to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania in 1960 with his parents. In 1972, at the age of 15, he went to the Hauza Ilmiya in Qum in Iran and studied there for 10 years, finally finishing his Dars-e-Kharij, which is ijtihad lectures that are equivalent to postgraduate studies under Ayatollah al-Uzma Sheikh Wahid Khurasani. In 1983, on the invitation of the Shia Muslim community in British Columbia, Syed moved to Vancouver, where he served for many years, after which in 1991 he moved to Toronto, Canada, where he served as the Director of Islamic Education and the Information Center, providing a variety of religious studies to Shias in North America. And since July 1996 to currently, he has fulfilled the responsibilities of resident alim of the Jafri Islamic Center of Shia Ishnashri Jamaat of Toronto. And in addition to this, Syed has also published more than 50 books and informational articles regarding Islam and the madhab of Ahlul Bayt. So once again, thank you so much, Sheikh. I would like to present the floor to you. and inshallah we can hear from you, and then after which we can then take in questions from the crowd.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطاهرين. Dear sisters and brothers in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I was told that this will be a program dealing with the matters of Aqidah, especially when we talk about Usul al-Din. So I would like to spend some time in this introductory part of the program to talk about the importance of Aqidah and the belief system. Our ulama, when they talk about our deen, they have come up with two very beautiful terms. Many times we look at those terminologies and we hear about it from our childhood, but we do not that much sometimes appreciate the symbolism behind selection of those words. Like usuluddin or furuddin, these are terminologies, of course, invented by the ulama, and there is nothing wrong in it. Actually, it's a very meaningful way of explaining what is deen. When we talk about Islam, basically we divide it into two parts. Usuluddin, which is the foundation or the roots of that tree, and furuddin are basically the fruits or the branches of that foundation. So that relationship is very important. You can't really have the structure if the foundation is not strong. And when we talk about usul al-din, this is where we are talking about the matters of aqidah, the belief system. That has to be really strong. And only then, the fruits which come out, or the branches and the fruits become, either more strong, diverse, plentiful, or it might be a tree which is becoming dry, which no fruits there. And everything goes back to the status of that foundation, the usul. And so it's very essential to realize that usul al-din and aqidah is a very essential part, as the term itself explains. Without that, we can't really have deen as such. When we even look at the relationship between the furu and usul, you have to realize that the value of furu depends on the sound and the valid status of the usul. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, there are 4 to 5 ayat where he talks about this issue where he says, Man amila salihan min dhakarin aw untha. Whoever does a good deed, whether a male or a female, doesn't matter. وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ. But interestingly, all 4 or 5 ayat, he emphasizes this point, that it's not only amal salih, good deeds by itself, وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ, provided the iman is there. Allah will not waste their good deed, and he will reward them in a justified manner. And so there is a strong connection between usul and furu. And so in the Shi'i perspective, it has been emphasized. If you look at the Islamic laws book of our mujtahideen, the very first ruling is very fundamental, where it says that when it comes to the issue of taqleed only pertains to the details of the furu and not usul al-din. It is actually forbidden to do blind following when it comes to the matter of aqidah. What it means is that not everyone has to become a philosopher or a nuclear scientist to understand the concept of usul al-din. What it means is that, a person should at least reflect on these concepts. Yes, our parents teach us initially. We go to a madrasa, we know from our muallim and our teacher. We listen to the ulama, the scholars. But this is where we are to then move from the phase of being born in a Shia, Muslim Shia family by birth, following that tradition, into a Shia Muslim now who is establishing that same belief system on understanding and conviction. And it doesn't have, as I said, not every Shia is expected to become, a philosopher or a mujtahid or a scientist. No, the common sense is very important, and that is the basis of the basic ideas of usul al-din. Of course, when it comes to details, um, that's where we need to go to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Ma'sumin. But the fundamental concepts of usul al-din should be something that you can rationalize and intellectualize in your own mind. I'll just give you one simple example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was passing by one day in one of the alleys of Medina, and he saw an old lady, basically, spinning the wheel to make, wool and thread from it. And interestingly, the Prophet stopped for a moment, and she was an old lady, a very simple old lady, and he asked her, "How do you believe in God?" And she just removed her hand from the handle of the spinning wheel, and it stopped. He says, if this small item that I have in front of me cannot move without my hand, I look at the world around me. It cannot run without somebody who is moving it. And so for her, she was probably not even an illiterate person, not definitely not a scientist or anything. But according to her level, she was able to explain that this is the basis of my belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where we come to understand that it is important for our people, especially when they reach to this age of intellectual maturity, to reflect on these issues. And if there are issues and questions, definitely go and ask, because to have doubts is not a problem by itself, but to resolve the doubt is the main objective there. And so let me conclude here is that one of the important issues that we have in our Shia perspective of Islam is that in usul al-din, for the basics of it, not for everything in detail in usul al-din, but for the basics of it, when we talk about the existence of God, unity of God, when we talk about the concept of guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent, when we talk about the necessity of having a life in after death, the concept of hereafter, these are some of the issues which has to be based on aqli basis. Only then we move on to the furu, where the issue is either you become an expert in Islamic laws according to the accepted sources of the Sharia and derive the conclusion yourself, or you do taqleed, or a third option would be to do ihtiyat, which is even more difficult. But this is where we have to realize that the role of reason and aql in usul al-din is very important. Let me end with one statement that for example, if somebody says, I believe in God because the Quran says so, or because the Quran is saying so. So the question would be, why do you believe in the Quran? He says, well, God says that I have to believe in the Quran. This will become a vicious circle in logic, and it's not acceptable. And that is where you will see, even in the sayings of the Imams in Usul Kafi, in Kitab al-Tawheed, or you look at even Kitab al-Tawheed of Sheikh Saduq, you will see many of the arguments, actually I would say most of the arguments, when it comes to the issue of the divinity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our Imams have used what is known as a rational approach for the matters of Aqidah. Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase the tawfiqat of every one of you, inshallah. I'll conclude my introduction here.
Ahsan, Sayyidina. Thank you so much for that enlightening, albeit brief talk. Inshallah, we can get to hear from you more as the session continues. I'd like to just draw everyone's attention to one point that I feel is very important, beginning with myself personally, by admonishing myself. That Syed mentioned that we need to move from a Shia by birth to a Shia who is defending and working towards his faith and in his faith with conviction. And in regards to that, I feel there is a profound message for all of us here that we have to take ourselves to the next level. We can't suffice with just living a life based on what we've been, yes, blessed with, to be born into the madhab of the Ahlul Bayt and followers of the Ahlul Bayt. We need to take it one step further, and we need to actually look at our religion and understand why the ulama have gone forward into this task. Why are they taking it in such a complex level? It's because they want to condense the information for us so that we can move forward with our religion. So with that, we would like to move on to the question and answer. Alhamdulillah, Said, there's been a lot of questions that have been coming in. We thank you all for sending in your questions. Some of them are sending them on WhatsApp. Some of them are sending on YouTube and replying on the chat. So thank you very much for tuning in and making this a truly interactive session. So Said, the first question that has come in is, why was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so active centuries ago, but not now? In other words, why does Islam want us to believe in historical events and not present occurrences?
Let me just put it in a wider perspective. You see, for us, we are here now. We look at things from our own time frame, and this is where the question is coming up. You know, why do I have to go and look at the book which came 7 centuries ago, 14 centuries ago, in the 7th century of the Common Era? This is where we are looking at the time frame. If you look at a more broader perspective, which is the perspective of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we may just imagine that this is the beginning of the human dawn and this is the end. The Prophet of Islam came here towards the end. You will see that, one of the signs of Qiyamah that is coming closer is the advent of the last prophet. For us, it is 14 centuries. It hasn't yet happened. But from a broader timeline, coming of the prophet was towards the end. And so this is where we have to realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I have given you so many examples of the past nations. You look at your own situation, you will definitely be able to relate to something which happened in the past. So already there is quite a lot we can look, and this is where, if you look at Surah Yusuf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of that story in Surah Yusuf, he uses the term when he talks about the stories of the Quran. The stories of the Quran is not storytelling. It is not bedside stories. It is not to put us to sleep. It is actually to awaken us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the term ibra. This is the term in Surah Yusuf. Ibra literally means a bridge. So you look at the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, which was in the past, much long before Islam came. But that story, now we have to build the bridge, the ibra, from that time to our own time. You look at the story of, let me just go with that example. Our youths these days have a lot of challenges when it comes to the gender relationship, difficult situations. Look at the example of Yusuf alayhi salam. And that's where you learn. So yes, we have not all the stories in the Quran, but you have to create that ibra, that bridge between the past to the future, or look at the future in light of the similar situations which came in the past. And so there was no need for any new book to come after the Quran or new Nabi to come after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Ahsan Syed, thank you so much. I really, really would like to reiterate the point of making the bridge and the connection between us and the stories of the Holy Quran, because it really brings things into perspective and allows us to actually sit back and realize that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had revealed all those years ago was for the entire humanity, be it in the past, be it in the present, and definitely for the future, which is us. And so, if we take the Holy Quran as the divine book, then we must also understand that its divinity stems from the fact that it is timeless and that it is catering for all generations. Said there's a question here that I believe you must have gotten quite a bit, but nonetheless, inshallah, we can all get guided from your answer. It says, one strong point against atheism is that a creation cannot exist without a creator. How do we justify the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Where did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala come from?
Well, either we can have a full session talking about it,
Yes, I
or
agree. I agree.
we can make it simple by, using examples, and that's what I'll do here. Um, you see, when we discuss this issue where we say everything needs a cause, and therefore there should be God. So, what is the cause of God? In Islamic philosophy, this is actually uh, phrased slightly differently. We don't say everything needs a cause. We say every possible thing needs a cause. What does possible mean? Means something which could exist or could not exist. Means existence or non-existence was neutral to that entity. We can think of a horse and we can say, okay, maybe there is a horse on the outside on the street. It could be, it could not be. If it is there, then somebody brought it, or the cause has to be there. When we talk about something which is impossible, it can't happen. So you have possible, impossible, and then there is a third opposite of it, which is known as necessary or essential. So we say every possible thing needs a cause. So you go from the chain of, the item to the creator to the cause and effect, and the chain goes until it has to stop with a cause which is not possible but which is necessary. Otherwise, this line of chain and cause and effect will go on indefinitely, where there is no existence. Let me give you one example here, just to simplify this. When they bring chai to us in Tabarruk, there are some volunteers who serve you the regular tea. Others, I think, maybe in Dar es Salaam or Mombasa, they say mori chai, which is without the sweet. So it means that the chai by itself, the sweetness in relation to the chai, it is not a necessary relationship. The chai, the tea became sweet because of the sugar. So then I'm asking you the next question. How did the sugar become sweet? Was there sugar which was not sweet? Sugar, by definition, is something which is sweet by itself. It didn't need an external cause. Like the chai could be, sweet or unsweet. But the sugar itself, you can't have. If somebody sells you a sugar which is not sweet, I'll not, you wouldn't even buy it because it is not by definition sugar. Sugar is supposed to be sweet. So sweetness in relation to sugar is essential part of it. And so when we talk about human beings, existence or non-existence is equal for us, neutral. When we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wujud and existence is essential part of the definition of God. Means somebody who is self-subsistent, he doesn't need any other cause. So just as the example of sugar and sweetness in relation to chai and sweetness, similarly when we talk about God, we do not say that everything needs a cause. We say every possible thing needs a cause until you reach to somebody, to an entity or a being which is absolute being, which doesn't need anyone else or anything else.
Ahsant, Maulana. Just taking opportunity of this moment, I'd like to once again request the brothers and sisters who are tuning in from YouTube and also those who are sending in their questions on WhatsApp. Please, brothers and sisters, if you do have any questions related to Aqaid and Aqidah, which is the topic of this discussion, our core belief system, please do send them in. We have been receiving quite a few questions, but we're always more than welcome to, you're always more than welcome to send in your questions, and inshallah, we will address them to Syed as we go along. Syed, a few other questions that have come here now. One of them I'd like to present to you. It's a bit of an interesting one. It says, what could be the purpose of the Almighty creating such a vast universe, so many planets, galaxies, etc., with no known life there so far?
I think the last sentence is the answer to that question. That we don't know about it fully at the moment. Quran says in one place that you have not been given knowledge but a little. So although we know quite a lot, but that quite a lot in comparison to the knowledge which is out there is still limited. And we just believe as a necessary component of Allah's wisdom and knowledge that nothing has been created without a purpose. So there must be a good purpose. Sometimes we know those, sometimes we don't know that. Just to give you one idea of the level of knowledge that we have now, is that when we are told that when the Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farj Sharif makes his appearance, and the knowledge that he will share with the world, the ratio would be that whatever knowledge that we would have acquired, what is now till that day when the appearance happens, would be only 1 out of 25 person. So basically, if you look at the 100%, then what we would have at that time attained with all our space travels and everything would be just 4%. And Imam will then share the 96% which is missing there. So there is quite a lot we still need to discover and learn. And the more we learn, the more we understand the wisdom and the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Subhanallah. I guess if there's any hopeful astronauts out there in our crowd today, then Sheikh must have given you some motivation now to explore space and inshallah find out more of Allah's creation if they're there in other planets.
Well, that's the problem with our Muslims, when things happen, then we say, oh yeah, Quran said that. Oh, why didn't you do anything?
Yeah.
As Amir al-Mu'mineen in his last will, this is between Zarbat and Shahadat. So the timing is very, very crucial there. He is actually giving advice on very essential issues. And then he says, Allah, Allah, fil Quran. I remind you of Allah regarding the Quran, La yusbiqukum بالعمل غيركم. It shouldn't be that others come and act on the Quran other than yourself. So it is possible that people gain wisdom from the Quran, even though they are not Muslims, and the Muslims are still there just reading it. And so that's the sad part.
Yeah, it is definitely, and it's. I guess it comes as a challenge to us, the generation of today, because we consider ourselves one who have seen the past generations and have seen quite a bit, and we are living in a time right now. I'm sure you'll agree with me, Maulana. We're living in a time right now that is a time where information is literally at our fingertips, and I feel as if we would be doing a disservice to our religion if we did not at least take the initiative to look more into what our ulama have left us, what gems they have left us, look into the Quran and look into it. I feel you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but through the lens of the Aimma, because today we can see that most of us know God through what the Aimma have taught us. We have understood God through what the Aimma have taught us. We understand the Quran through what the Aimma have taught us. And therefore, once we look at their lives and we take inspiration from their lives and look at their teachings and their literary works, we can literally carve out a roadmap from us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah.
Let me probably, since we talked about this issue and you also emphasized it, let me remind you of a very interesting letter sent by university students from Europe to Ayatollah Sistani about 4 or 5 years ago. And he wrote a very detailed response to that. I think item number 8 was very important. It is available online, people can look at it, where he's emphasizing that the Shia, young men and women should go to the higher studies of science and medical field. He actually singles that out. And he says something very important. He says, it is not sufficient for you to be the followers in that field. You should reach to a level where you become the trendsetter and you become the leader of that field. And then he says, this is not something impossible. If you look at the Muslim civilization, your forefathers have done this in past. If this could be done in the past, why can this not be done now? And so it's a challenge he's throwing out there to the young people now that, do not only go and become muqallid in your field of science and technology or medical, science, be the leader and the trendsetter that other follow what you do as far as research is concerned.
So, subhanallah. It's true that we need to challenge the status quo. We need to actually go out there and show what we are capable of. Inshallah, we will try our level best. Sheikh, there's another question that I have here. It goes as follows. It says, today we have people both older and younger that are shaky on their aqidah. A few of them think it is okay to even praise the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt for the good that they may have done, if any at all. How do you suggest we as a community should help them be firm on their aqidah?
I think the first thing is really to reflect and study on the aqidah more, to put it in more solid grounds. And when it comes to the issue of those who were opponents of the Ahlul Bayt, our point is, first of all, we don't really, it is not necessarily that we always, abuse them in that way. But the point is that you shouldn't reach then to the other extreme. You see, this is where we get into extremes. On one hand, the issue of abusing goes on, and especially in this social media, it creates a lot of problem for the Shias around the world. And people have to be responsible that what they are saying now is not only affecting that individual, it has an impact on all the entire Shia community around the world. On the other extreme, when you talk about, having a cordial relationship with others, you don't go to the other extreme of saying that, yeah, talking about the charity. For example, if you come to know that Hitler had a favorite charity cause where he was helping, so what? It is ridiculous to talk about charity of Hitler compared to what he has done. So when it comes to the issue of haqq and batil, we don't necessarily have to, praise those who were the uh, enemies or the opponents of Ahlul Bayt. But as I said, you have to still maintain that middle ground of having a mutual respect, because we are going through very difficult and challenging times. We have people who don't differentiate between Shia and Sunni, for example, when they attack Muslims. So we have to be cognizant of that situation and maintain our, sarat mustaqim, not go to one extreme or the other.
So, Said another one, Alhamdulillah, we've had quite a few questions coming in. I think I should go over them. There's one here that reads, Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. What are the limitations of taqiyya when we are questioned on our beliefs?
The limitation of taqiyya are there, although we really are not living in the time of taqiyya. There's a lot of freedom in what people believe. So, but the limitation is when a person realizes that his life or honor or those who are around him will be impacted on that level. Then they can do the taqiyya, whether it is for the protection of their life or their ird, which means their honor, or even their property. So they can exercise taqiyya, and before even taqiyya, there is something known as tawriyah, where you give a response which is kind of a vague. So it's not totally, hiding your faith, but giving a response where you still can get away.
Said another one here I have, it reads as follows. Death in accidents, for example, by road, sea, war, or even the coronavirus, are these destined and fixed, as we say, or are they things that are influenced by our actions and what our a'mal dictate?
When it comes to the issue of death, we have to realize this is one of the mysteries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no method of knowing when a person will die, where will he die, in what state, by which method. And so it's, and that is where I would caution people that sometimes, people go through a long period of illness before they die, and they say, oh, you must have committed sins, or somebody is inflicted with a disease, and this is absolutely un-Islamic, not acceptable at all. Nobody knows. Maybe that person is in a higher level of iman and Allah is testing him. The higher you go, the challenges and imtihan and ibtila becomes even more difficult. So first of all, we don't have to make that judgment. And when it comes to death, no, we cannot necessarily relate that to the actions of the individual. It is something which is a mystery. The only thing we know is that yes, al-mawtu haqqun. Death is a reality. No two human beings on the face of this earth, whether they believe in God or not, will not dispute that reality. How it happens, why it happens, when it happens, nobody knows. So you have like, look at the situation of coronavirus in Iran. It started with the holy city of Qom.
Yes.
So what are you going to say there? So you cannot make those kinds of judgment. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. Ahsan. And I guess once we are strong on our aqidah, a lot of things then come into perspective, especially with the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I feel this is something that a lot of us, myself included, definitely, we tend to say that we believe in the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when presented with the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in action, in either our day to day lives or seeing it on a macro scale unfolding in the world, we usually, if not outwardly, but inwardly, at least have a little bit of thoughts that how can something like this happen? How can, for example, what is the situation that is occurring in Yemen right now? How could Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as A'udhu billah, astaghfirullah, actually. How could Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allow for something of this sort or an atrocity of this sort to unfold in Yemen, while He is the most merciful Lord, He is the most omnipotent Lord. I think that leads us to our next question that says, uh, the Quran has a lot of references to extreme pleasure and eternal hell, and threats and torture are one of the main tools Islam uses to persuade people to accept the religion. Uh, why does an all powerful and merciful God need to convince humans to follow a religion in such a manner, especially if something is clearly true? And why would an omnipotent, omniscient, and merciful God want to send almost the entire humanity to hell? Said, I apologize in advance for the sort of how can I put it, the brass nature of this question, but
No,
it's
that's
been
that's
asked
fine.
alas.
That's how we will be able to think about it and talk about it. That's not a problem. You see, the issue is that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala's justice is such that I think the purpose of human creation is very important. Allah Subhanahu wa Taala did not create us like robots. This is where after saying that by the sun and the moon, the day and night, the heavens and the earth, and then he talks about the soul of the human being, and then he says, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. He gave the ability to every human soul, the ability to absorb the divine teachings, to know what is right, essential things, and what is wrong. And then he supported that with the teachings of the Anbiya and the books which came with them. Um, but he has given us freedom of choice. That's the whole beauty of it. And that's why you have the day of Qiyamah. That here you have freedom to do whatever you want. Allah says, I'm not going to force you to follow this path. I'm going to show you, make sure that the guidance comes to you, but I would like you to choose that guidance by yourself. And this is how the reward and punishment would be there. فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Successful is the person who maintains that inner light. And failure is the person who doesn't, let that light come out because of the sins. And so the freedom of choice, number one, is to be kept in mind. And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not intervene. It's only in rare cases that He intervenes, like we saw in the example of the nations which came before Islam, where you have punishments on the people of Nuh or the Lut and other nations. Otherwise, He just lets things be there, not because He is not merciful. No, but remember, He also is just and He is living things to be judged finally in the hereafter. And that perspective of hereafter has to be kept in mind there all the time. Yemen, it is not God done, action. This is human action. When you look at Syria, or even what is happening with the coronavirus. This is the environment. How it started, still we don't know. Whether it was because of the doing of the human beings that themselves, mismanage things, or what, we don't know. There are so many conspiracy theories going on about this lab in China and this and that. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lives things, and He's going to deal with both the zalim and the mazloom in the hereafter. The oppressors will be punished for it, and those who are oppressed will be rewarded. And so this element is there, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not intervene. We as Shia Muslims should always remember, if there was an issue of intervention, what happened on the day of Ashura?
Yes.
You can ask the same question.
Yeah.
This is son of Ali and Fatima. This is the grandson of Rasulullah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was testing Hussein ibn Ali on one hand, that will you accept the bay'at of Yazid, or will you be firm on your path even though you are killed? On the other hand, Yazid is being tested. That are you going to accept the reality and hand over power and leadership to Hussein, or are you going to kill him? And both had choices. And this is where we see that it's going to then come out on the day of judgment. Now, whether almost entire humanity is going to go to Jahannam or not, this is Allah's prerogative. We don't know. We'll have to leave it for the day we see that. Yeah.
Syed. I think I've gotten a few questions that I personally would also love to get your view on, Syed. So I'd love to ask them at this point. And the first one of them is, Assalamu alaikum, Syed. What is the distinction between shirk and tawassul?
Okay. Tawassul and shafa'at, there are two things connected to one another. And so the issue of shirk. You see, shirk means to associate someone or something in the divinity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we talk about tawassul or shafa'at, tawassul means seeking intercession or seeking a link, and wasila. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, look for a wasila. And shafa'at means the person at the other end of the tawassul is going to do intercession for us. So these are all actually one and the same, but there's only first step and then the second. We do tawassul to Amir al-Mu'minin, for example, and he does the shafa'at for us. So the issue is, where does shirk come in there? Shirk means associating someone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, where does this whole issue of tawassul come in? I was praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but because of my own deficiency, my own sins, my own weaknesses, my du'as doesn't reach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what do I do then? Then I seek the tawassul of those who are beloved in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so ask them to do shafa'at for me. The ultimate decision is still of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Previously, I was trying to call directly. I'll use a Sunni fellow who made a comment, and I'll just use it in a different positive way. That initially I was doing direct dialing, but my line was not going through. Maybe I had not paid the bill or whatever. There were problems there. And so that I went through the operator. And na'uzubillah, I don't need just using this term to explain things. And through the operator, I was able to reach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The point is that I was going directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or I went through the intercession of somebody. He is still alone there. if there is any partnership in this process of tawassul and shafa'at, tell me, is the partnership up there or on my side? I was alone first, doing my du'as, and there was no answer. Then I got a partner for myself. I took Ali ibn Abi Talib on myself. I took Hazrat Abbas on myself. Or I took Imam Hussain alayhi salam on my side. That please put a good word for me. So if there is any shirk or partnership, it is here. It's not there with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't know why these people find it so difficult. And let me, it might become more technical and we might need more time, but I will just summarize here. Even the Wahhabis do not deny the concept of tawassul and shafa'at when it comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The only thing they say is that tawassul and shafa'at with Rasul was valid when he was alive, and they believe it is valid on the day of Qiyamah. They only have problem with the shafa'at when he is not, according to them, he's passed away now. And so the concept of shafa'at and tawassul, even they wouldn't consider that to be shirk. Because if it was shirk when he was alive, if it is shirk after he has died, then it should also be shirk when he was alive. And that is not the reality. And this is where you realize shirk is something else, tawassul and shafa'at is something else. It is not absolutely shirk. According to Ayatollah Ja'far Subhani, is one of the senior scholars in the field of theology these days in Qom. And he makes a very good point. He says, even if you don't agree with shafa'at and you say it is useless, but you can never say this is shirk. Because shirk means to assign a partner to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the process of tawassul and shafa'at, we are assigning a partner to ourselves, not with Allah. And so, let me add one more thing, because recently I heard there was a program in Ramadan where a young, speaker was talking about it. And he says, no, this is all, not there in the Quran. Well, there are actually many ayat in the Quran which deny shafa'at in one way or another. There are many other ayat which conditionally says this is okay. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, illa bi'idhni, in ayat al-Kursi. Who can do the shafa'at except by his permission? It means that there are some individuals who have the permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or in one place where Ar-Rahman, he's radiya, he's pleased with them and he will accept the shafa'at. And in the whole universe, if it is not Muhammad and Ali and Fatima and Hassan and Hussein or Abbas, then who can be in that category?
SubhanAllah.
Especially when they talk about, this is only valid when they were alive. My point is that, are you looking at life and death from your perspective or from Allah's perspective? You have to look at it from Allah's perspective. From the perspective of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the shuhada are alive. If you don't believe about other imams, Ali was a shaheed, Hussein was a shaheed, Abbas was a shaheed. According to the Nass Quran, according to the text of the Quran, they are alive from the perspective of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that argument of saying, once they are dead, it doesn't apply, it doesn't have any basis for it. For details, some other time, inshallah.
Inshallah. And if we're blessed to have the opportunity to sit with you again, I'm sure this is another question that will come up as a follow-up. And inshallah, we will be able to expound on it more. I feel like there's so much simplicity, Syed, in our religion. As a youth, personally speaking, is that sometimes we tend to, speaking about myself personally first, we tend to complicate things for ourselves in places where complication is not required. And that leads us down a road where later on we find ourselves at a point where we are starting to shake and starting to waver, while actually at the core of our belief, at the core of what we believe to be true and binding to ourselves, is our aqidah, is our usul al-din. And if we have not spent time on building it and making it as strong as possible, then yes, definitely, if the roots are not strong, then the leaves will start to fall. If the roots are not strong, then the branches will start to sway, and we might be able to be swayed by the winds. And in this case, the winds being the influences and the different challenges that come from generation to generation. I feel like every generation has its own challenges. I'm sure, Syed, you'll agree with me on that, that every generation comes with its own set of challenges. And we, as the youth of today, might have a different set of challenges than from the time when you, Syed, were a youth. But at the end of the day, what I feel is that, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, speaking to the youth, my fellow brothers and sisters, we must actively seek out the simplicity in Islam, because Islam was meant to be a religion which speaks to us, to our fitrah. It speaks to the most innermost being inside of us, and not only onto the surface level. And so, if we were to uncover the actual message that Islam is trying to give us, we would be able to actually take in the message of Islam much more comprehensively.
Well, I think the thing that we have to keep in mind is that the Islamic Sharia has been described as Shariatun Sahla or Shariatun Samha, which means a simple Sharia or a lenient Sharia. Sometimes because of the wrong teachings, you see, there's a problem that, there are many things which are cultural, many things we hear from childhood, and then we think this is part of the religious teachings. I remember listening to a video on YouTube of somebody who says that she was from the Shia Snashari background from East Africa, and now she has become kind of ex-Muslim. There's a whole group out there, and the examples that she gave of, in a way, ridiculing Islam were all wrong notions taught to her about Islam by her mother. Maybe she was looking at things culturally or whatever. So this it is nothing to do with Islam, which sometimes these issues end up pushing people away from faith, especially when it comes to the issue of living our life. Islam wants people to be relaxed, comfortable. Sometimes we make things even more complicated for ourselves. We have all these issues. Oh, should I travel on this day or not? Islam doesn't want you to make it so complicated. Then they take, and I don't know how much time we have. Let me just give an example. These days, this issue of the day of marriage. We go through Qamar Dar Aqrab and this and that. Some of those, I would say, okay, in case of marriage, hopefully it's only once in a lifetime issue. You want to be more careful there. But then if you look at many other things, many of the dates in the calendar will be crossed out.
Yeah.
You don't even have, then very few days in there. And then you look at, sometimes I hear from, this is more ladies, and I don't want to put them down. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bless them. They are the one who raised good, righteous children. But sometimes, I hear they say, oh, Moulana, what about the rukhsati on Saturday? Because we heard that, if you travel on Saturday, a traveler is good, he will come back home safely. So if my daughter is sent away in the marriage, she will end up coming back. Well, who told you she's going to come back as divorcee? Maybe she's just coming back to visit you. You don't want her to send her forever.
Yes.
So they take one thing and then link it with something which is unrelated. That was about musafir. That if you travel on Saturday, it's good. You will come back safe. So now they link it to marriage issue, or if the rukhsat is taking on Saturday, she will come back. Well, what is first of all wrong in her coming back to see you?
Excellent. Yeah.
And this is where we make our own life more difficult than what Islam has said. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. I just wanted to take this opportunity to check in with you. Said, are we okay on time? Are you okay to continue maybe for one last question?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. So, dear viewers, we've almost come to the end of our interactive session with Syed. The last question that I have here, it reads as follows. It says, there's some who say that the homosexuality as is something that is natural. It is there in the human. So how can we react to opinions such as these, and how can we generally uh, have a relationship, or what to what extent should our relationship be with homosexuals, and how should we treat them in society? How should we sort of act with them
Yeah.
as members of society?
Well, there are actually two parts of it. I'll leave the second one for some other time, inshallah. What I would say is that this whole argument whether this is natural or nurtured, that is debatable anyway. Unfortunately, there are many things which is happening in the West as far as the society is concerned, where things are being classified or declassified from one category to another. You know, Instead of dealing with human and social problems, it becomes very easy just to say, okay, it's no more illegal. So it becomes legal.
Yeah.
The problem is gone. Whereas Islam doesn't shy away from dealing with the issues and talking about it. That this is what it is, and so this whole issue whether this is natural or not is debatable. Number one. Number two, if even if we say that the tendency is natural, it doesn't. Maybe the tendency or the feeling itself is not a sin. When it comes to the issue of acting it out, this is where Islam says, don't do this. Somebody, when we talk about in psychology, there are people we say they are sadists. In their nature, they have this, feeling of pleasure in hurting others. Well, you cannot say because he's by nature this way, so it's okay. No. Although you'll say here he's hurting somebody else, and in the other case, it's a mutual. I'm just using an example that somebody might have a tendency in their nature or character, but as long as it is not acted out, we don't have a problem. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not punish that individual. And so if somebody, has that, what it means is that that individual is going through a more difficult test than maybe others. And they have to handle it and deal with it. People have desires of different kinds. Acting on those desires becomes a problem. Having those feelings by itself is not necessarily an issue. A person will not be punished for that. And so we had to, looking at it from that perspective as far as Islam is concerned.
So, thank you so much. Ted, I feel we have reached the time that we had set forth for the session. Once again, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to you for taking the time to come and speak with us, and we've definitely learned a lot from this discussion. I myself personally have gained a lot of valuable lessons, and I think the main take-home lesson that I think can be best summarized, I hope, is that we need to stop taking Islam as a big, scary book of rules, but rather adopt it as a lifestyle, rather adopt it as a way of living, and seek out the pleasure that Islam has kept for us, rather than seeking pleasure in other matters, in fleeting matters. We should rather shift our focus and try and seek out the pleasure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept within Islam for us. As you said, Islam is a religion that wants us to be relaxed, it wants us to be comfortable, it wants us to focus on what is the most important thing in our life, which is the purpose of our life, if I'm not mistaken. And so, inshallah, brothers and sisters, may we all strive to be on the right path. May we all strive to strengthen our aqidah and start at the basics, start with the building blocks one by one, brick by brick. And inshallah, we will in no time be looking at a castle in Jannah. So with that, Syed, I'd like to, on behalf of the Dar es Salaam Jamaat, on behalf of the KSIJ Tabligh Board, on behalf of the Development Society, I would like to extend once again my sincere gratitude. Thank you so much for taking this time. Jazakumullah.
Well, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give the tawfiq to each one of us, inshallah, to serve this cause in the best possible manner. And may He bless all those who participated and send their questions. I know we were not able to handle all of them, but inshallah, maybe in future sessions we'll be able to do that. And, during these difficult times, take care of yourself, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you so much, dear viewers, for tuning in. I'd like to also extend my gratitude to the KSIJ Dar es Salaam Jamaat, the media room, for facilitating our stream today, and also for the Tabligh Board for organizing this session. Inshallah, if you have any feedback regarding our sessions, inshallah, if you have any constructive criticism that we can use to better ourselves and work towards this great cause, please do feel free to contact us, and inshallah we can work towards it, and together we can come forward and bring more issues to light that can be of benefit to us. So with the grace of the Almighty, I would like to wish you all a blessed night, a blessed evening, wherever you may be. I know we've had viewers from different parts of the world. So once again, ahsant, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.